Welcome back to the Palace. I'm your host, Crown Vic. Today's topic will be on time. The importance or the lack of importance of time. Time is something that I've been contemplating for years. And the best way you can notice time is in the world around you, by reflecting on the world around you and how things are constantly changing. I brought up the change topic in my video on surrender. When do we surrender? And ultimately, the whole point of that monologue came to the conclusion of by accepting change when it comes. Because by holding on to things, you tend to suffer. What is suffering? Suffering is going through a period of discomfort, something that is making you very uncomfortable, or even slightly uncomfortable. Just uncomfortable regardless. And usually uncomfort or discomfort comes from, as a Buddhist might say, resistance. You're resisting the inevitable. And the best way to let go of the suffering is by no longer resisting it, letting it happen, letting go, accepting change as it arrives. Surrender. Do you surrender to anything? Does anything become a doormat? When do we surrender? That is entirely up to the individual in finding out what they're holding on to. Is it worth it? Is it worth the fight? For example, if you have a loved one who is sick or you're sick, do you fight through the disease or do you accept the disease? One might say that in accepting the disease, you succumb to it. But it's more along the lines of you're accepting it, that here's where you are. You're accepting the reality. From here, as you accept it, you decide what can you do next, or what can you do to help yourself, to overcome your situation. It's not to surrender for as soon as, problems arise. Surrendering and accepting things is only the first step. You surrender to reality, your current situation. And by surrender, it's when you have no other options, right? You're terminally ill. You did all you can do, to fight a certain disease. From there, you surrender to the spiritual world or something, or a power that's greater than yourself, to either save you from the situation and help you overcome it, or allow things to be. So, by surrender and accepting things, is just simply acknowledging, kind of like you're an alcoholic. You accept that, okay, I am an alcoholic. That's the first step. And then from there, you look for ways to recover. Okay, well, I'm an alcoholic. What is the first step to recovery? What is the next step? Because that's actually the first step. what is the next step to recovery. I may have to go to, a rehab, or go to a group, one of those group sessions. I can't remember what you call those things, those places. But pretty much, you get a support network that helps you overcome your alcoholism. So yeah, that's what I set out at, to talk about surrendering and how changes. You can see how time works through change, the changes in around you. And I brought up the point of, and I've been contemplating time because I see the changes all around me, in the people, in the places, even in my own, personality. There are things that change within me and things that change within my surroundings. I've known people in my life that seem, in the beginning, like Superman or Superwoman or Superwoman. In the beginning, they seem invincible. They seem that like they can take on the world. But over time, you start to see that they're only human as the chips start chipping away. With time, it's not necessarily, doesn't have to do anything external, like they're constantly at war and their enemies are chipping at their armor. More so, it's just the deteriorating state of their health, or their financial positions. Just pretty much just age. We're just getting older. I can recall some people in my life, they, at one point, they were here, and then, they got sick, and they lost, a lot of themselves, lost a lot of weight, and it's just like, wow, this is really where we are right now, how things change. And it can be so easy for us to kind of look back and look at the quote unquote good old days, right? Oftentimes we look at the good old, like the days that's past, and say those were the better days. But we don't really see the good old days until it's gone, Right now, you're going to be looking back on this moment where you are right now as the good old days in a few years. Or at least an easier time versus the years that are approaching. Time is constantly ticking away. We are constantly dying. We are constantly moving towards something, but ultimately we're moving toward our graves. And in the meantime, we're also moving toward a destination, whatever that destination might be, whatever that goal might be, whatever you've been visualizing. Time is a tool, and like all tools, it can be used as a benefit, as a tool that can help you, can free you, or something that can hurt you. Are you using your time wisely? Are you building up yourself and building on something? Or are you using it and and wasting it, using it to harm yourself. It's all a matter of your intention and what your state of mind is in how you're using your time. Someone said that the best way to know where you're going is by looking at your habits, the habits that you have today. What are your habits? What are you doing with your time? One of the things that I also wanted to talk about in regards to time is meditation. Have you ever been still in the present moment and just felt the seconds pass by? I read this article where someone wrote about how we can manipulate time according to our psychological state. And that's also written in Method Writing, how we can increase psychological time through our descriptions of, character, setting, props, mood, by the amount of words you put between an action or a dialogue. Say, for example, the boy opens the door. That's an action. But between that, you put the psychological. You start to build on the psychological time. So, give you an example. The boy opens the door. The rotting stench of what smelled like. Let me see. Alright, the rotting stench of what smelled like eggs and feces hits his nose. He could see it he could see the atmosphere. He could see the way hits his nose. I'm trying to build on something. But ultimately, you probably get it. So it's all about description. And I'm more of a sit down type of person that just writes this stuff down rather than just coming off the top of my head. But ultimately, you can manipulate time, not just in writing, but also in the things that you do. For example, if you are outside playing on a playground as a kid, time seems to fly by, versus if you're in a classroom and you gotta work on something that you're having a hard time working on. Or if you're bored in the classroom, time seems to slow down, right? And so as you're meditating, you still the mind and you can feel time pass by slowly. And as a result, you start to get control over your mind. And as you get control of your mind, you have more control over your time. And once we get control over our time and aware of what we want to do with it, therefore we can use it wisely.